So I'm Deborah Cope. I'm the Acting Chair of the New South Wales Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal.
We refer to it as IPART.
IPART.
That's right. Well, thank you for speaking with us. Can I ask you first, what role does IPART play in New South Wales?
So we are the price regulator in New South Wales. So we set prices for water in Sydney and the Hunter, and we recommend on public transport prices in the city and also in the regions. We regulate the safety of electricity networks. So we have a range of pricing and regulatory functions, and one of those is around local government. And so each year we look at what the costs on average have gone up across local governments, and we set an amount that local governments can increase their rates by based on that average cost increase. And then each year, councils who think that they need additional money to that can come to us and request what is called a special variation to increase their rates by more. And there are a range of reasons why different councils might feel that they need extra money.
When was IPART established, just for background?
IPART has been around for quite some time because there was a pricing tribunal that's been around. So we've been around for a significant number of years. And it was established to set prices for things like water utilities, where you've got a monopoly utility. So there is only one provider. It's essential service. People have no choice. So our role is to decide what the prices should be for those sorts of things.
So for getting to the Central Coast case, a relatively newly amalgamated council 3.5 years ago, and the council being suspended for a period of time, and the new administrator having a look at the books and finding some significant holes in those books, has recommended will recommend a 10 to 15% average rate increase for Central Coast ratepayers. How does that mechanism work for the tribunal? How does that in fact work?
Yeah, so we've got the applications come in, and we are consulting on those applications at the moment. So we welcome submissions from people who can give us their views on whether they think that is a legitimate request or not. Those applications close in March. We will then review those submissions close in March. We review the submissions, we look at the application, and then we will make a decision in May this year.
How much weight is given to the public submissions compared to, in this case, the council administrator's position?
So we recognise that this is a really tough time for ratepayers as well as for councils, and that we've got to get the balance right. It's really important that there is enough money available for councils to provide the services that people want, but also that rates aren't any more than they absolutely necessarily. Rates aren't any more than what's necessary. So we will review all of the submissions, and they will feed into our decision-making process. We think submissions are a really integral part of what we do. And when we make our decision, we do it around 4 key criteria. Are people aware? So do people know what's going on? Because we don't want rates going up without people knowing that that's going to happen. Is it affordable? And that's an issue that the submissions will often provide important information about whether something's affordable or not. Whether there is a demonstrated need for the money, and also whether the councils have done the work to determine whether there are other ways of saving money or whether there are other sources of revenue they can use so that they don't have to put rates up. And we look at the submissions, and they will feed into our consideration of all of those 4 criteria.
Well, that must be heartwarming for people listening to this. It's not an agency that is often put a focus on. However, on the Central Coast about 18 months ago, we reported that IPART made a determination for the Central Coast Water Authority, which recommended that, in fact, water rates or water and sewage charges went down by some amount. The council CEO at the time said that he was disappointed by that because it put a little hole in his budget. How did that determination come about? I mean, I myself as a ratepayer were very happily surprised that it went down, but how does that happen?
So the council, for water prices, the council puts together their proposal for what they should think prices should be. And they'll tell us what they think the costs are for delivering those services and therefore what the price should be. We then look at the efficiency of those costs, and we expect the council to have done the work necessary to be able to justify that the investment that they're proposing is a prudent, what we call prudent and efficient. Is it necessary, and is it at its lowest cost as possible? And when we looked at the Central Council's proposal last time, we didn't find the work had gone in to justify those costs sufficiently for us to be able to say it was reasonable for ratepayers to pay those costs. So that process was about saying, no, you hadn't justified the costs that you were suggesting people should pay.
So in theory that could happen again in this particular situation. Obviously a lot of us know a lot more about the woes in Central Coast Council financially. The administrator tells us that it's a prudent and he will argue that these rates are necessary. Yeah. I'll just ask you, the administrator on behalf of council has put a survey out for residents to fill in. And in the early form of that survey asked if you preferred a 10 or a 15% rate rise. And after some discussion with the community, they wanted another option in that regard, i.e. nothing. So they did move fast and put that option in there. However, some people like ourselves are worried that the reporting on that may be incomplete and not represent the wishes of the community. How do you, broader question, how do you see the reports that come in and the questioning that you do around that reporting?
Yeah. So the council's application actually reports all of that. It says that it had an initial survey, and then they changed the survey. They said based on the second survey, 72% of people said that they didn't want any rate rise. And about half of that 72% of people said that the reason they didn't want a rate rise was because of the mismanagement of the council. So those two themes that you've been talking about came very clear through that survey, and the administrator's been very, very transparent about that in their application. And that application's on our website too, so if anybody wanted to have a look at that, that's all available for people to look at.
In the case of the amalgamated Central Coast Council, we're also aware that there is a rates harmonisation process underway, whereas previously former Wyong Council ratepayers are paying proportionally more than Gosford. And this is happening concurrently with the proposed rate increases. Are you aware of the large variation of real rates to property owners there, from between -3% to reportedly up to 30%, depending on the value of the land?
We don't set the individual rates to individual ratepayers. That's the local governments that do that. What we do is set the percentage of how much the bucket can go up. But yes, we are aware of that differentiation. We're also aware of a lot of people from Wyong who have said that it's been unfair for them to be paying higher rates for some considerable period of time. So there will be a process that the council needs to go through with its community to work out what's the right blend of rates across different areas, across different categories of ratepayers: business, residents, farms and the mining sector, and also the difference between the minimum rate, which is the minimum everybody pays. You know, people in apartments, for example, are often on the minimum rate, and then what you pay if you're in a larger property.
So you're in effect regulating the average increase across the entire council area?
We're regulating the size of the bucket of money that they can collect.
Yeah.
it's their decision about how they then charge that across people in their area.
So presumably councils then have, as you say, a process to decide on how that mix happens.
Yes, and how it's distributed across the community.
So we can ask the administrator or the new council about that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
Well, I think that we've got most of that there. That would be very informative. Is there anything else you'd like to say to people of the Central Coast, ratepayers or otherwise of the Central Coast?
We are at the beginning of our process, but we look very closely at all applications and against those 4 criteria. So it is around, is the money necessary in order to provide the services that people need going forward? Have they looked at whether they can cut costs elsewhere? Is it going to be affordable, and have people been made aware of it? And that's an important part. And we do not raise rates lightly, but if it does meet those criteria and if it is necessary to provide important services, then we need to make sure that people have got the roads and the facilities that they need in their local community.
All right, well, thank you for speaking with Central Coast Newspapers and Coast Community News.
Thank you very much.